Morning. And the reason why is we have to ask ourselves one simple question. What is worship? If somebody was to ask you right now, what is worship? What would your response be? What would your response be when someone asks you, well, you sit there and you say, hey, we have a worship service. Well, what is worship? How do you worship? What are those things? Is worship just on Sunday morning or Sunday night, whatever your services are? Is worship just singing? Is it drama? What is it? You know, because a lot of us would sit there and say, oh, it's the different things we do. So you can do all these different artistic things and everything that we could even sit there and say, hey, offering, that's worship. You know, all these different things that we do, they're worship. And like I said, most people would ask. And I think most people would also say that is what we do on Sunday morning or Sunday night, whenever we gather for a worship service. I mean, that's what we call them, right? It's a worship service. Now, like I said, everything that we also, maybe we would extend and say, well, everything that we do in a service is part of the worship experience. That's everything that we do. Every element of the service is worship. And there's actually entire philosophies and structures to creating a worship service. When I went through school, one of the things, I take a class on how to build a worship service. And they use this illustration, and it's like building a house. And you have a foundation, and you have walls, and you have roofs, and you have doors, and cabinets, and carpet, and wallpaper, and paint, and drapes, and everything else like that in a worship service. And it's like building a house. And so you got to start with your foundation and work your way up. Now, one of the reasons why they use that was because they said a lot of times things that we get hung up on in a worship service are the things like the draperies. They are the things like the paint and the wallpaper. They are those things that we've all heard about the great worship wars. You know, what style of music are we going to do? What are we going to do when it comes to those things? And those things were the facade. They weren't the foundation of the worship service. They weren't the wall. They weren't even the walls. They weren't even the roof. They were literally, what color are we going to paint the walls? That was the question. That was where that came into it. But the thing is, even when we sit there and we start talking about that philosophy, it's still focused on a service, a worship service. And the thing is do we not need to know what worship is so that when we come together for a time of worship, we truly understand what we're doing here? And we have these times, we all take and make time for this, right? I mean, we've all got up this morning. Maybe some of us got up early. Maybe this was a day we could have slept in. It doesn't matter, but we got up and we carved some time out of our day to be able to come up here. We got all cleaned up, dressed nice, and we came to church. We came to participate in worship. But do we only come, and we have to ask ourselves, why do we come though? Do we come because we enjoy seeing everybody here? Is it because we like the music? Is it because we like the Sunday school lessons? Is it because we like some of these different elements? Is it because we like the preaching? And I doubt that's probably the case because you guys have to listen to me every week. But you see, to understand Christian worship, we have to recognize that worship flows from the person and work of God. That's where worship comes from. It's not us. We have this, we have this tendency sometimes we kind of forget, where does it actually come from? Worship begins with reflection on who God is. Think about this. Who God is, rather than reflecting on us and what He's done for us. We can come in here and go, well, I've had a phenomenal week. God has blessed me beyond compare, and we just have an incredible worship experience. Or maybe we come in and we just go, man, this week is absolutely stunk. I've had a horrible week, and we have an absolutely horrible worship experience. And I think it's because what we're doing is we come in and we're reflecting ourselves. We're not reflecting of who God is. You see, we have a bad tendency to put us at the center of worship, even though we don't mean to. And even if maybe we didn't at one time, it can start to revolve around that. And I even have to check myself on that every now and then. As I was preparing this and I was going through this, I got hit with some checks of my own. And I had to stop and go, when we sit down to create a worship service, I'm kind of going, I've been going, there's some weeks that I probably don't come at it from the right attitude that I'm supposed to. And we think of a worship service as something to help us connect with God. And I'm not saying that it can't help us connect with God, because it can. But is that the reason? Is that the root of why we come? Is to help us connect with God. And like I said, I believe again we can connect with Him at a very deeper level when we come together for a worship service. And it is possible, but it's not the point of why we come. We have to think about who God is and God's expectations for worship. See, worship is initiated by God. And we kind of stop sometimes, we would sit there and think about that, and we go, God didn't know He didn't. I'm the one that came. I'm the one that chose to sing. I'm the one that chose to do this. I'm the one that initiates God. Because we think about it from our side. We think about it from our perspective. And we think about that it starts with me. And what God has done for my life, and it starts with me, but it didn't actually start with us. You see, we would almost think, and sometimes we get hung up on this. And I'm going to tell you, even for me personally, and I'm very cautious about this because sometimes the imagery that I get, sometimes I almost think that if God invites us to worship, He's inviting us to worship Him. We can almost kind of sit there and get this image in our head. Isn't that a little conceited? Isn't that a little arrogant? You can almost imagine like God walking, we would sit there and we would get this image in our head like God walks in and He just goes, all right, everybody, that's right. You can begin to worship me. I am in the house. Go ahead, start worshiping me. But that's not what He does. He initiates it, but that's not His heart, His attitude, His mentality. We have to see, how does He initiate it? What is the point of it? You see, worship is an invitation. That's what it is. It's an invitation. It's not an invitation from me to you. It's not an invitation from the worship leader to you. It's not an invitation from you to God, saying, hey God, come. We're inviting you, come. It's not our invitation to Him. It's His invitation to us. And it's also not an invention. It's not something that we can create. And that's where we get into this thing that we sit there and sometimes we start to almost kind of put it at that point where it is an invention. We don't create worship. Rather, we respond to a person. That's what we do. And so this morning, we're going to be looking at John chapter 4. John chapter 4, this is the story of Jesus and the Samaritan woman. And a lot of us are very familiar with this story for a lot of different reasons. This is a very popular story. But we're going to be focusing on just a very small section of it. And I believe it can also start to help us understand where they were at and what worship had become and what it was. And sometimes where we can sometimes get. It's not anything that we do intentionally. It's not something that we do on purpose by any means. But it is something that can just slowly over time happen, or we don't even realize that it's happening. So in John chapter 4, starting in verse 21, and it says, Jesus replied, "Believe me, dear woman, the time is coming when it will no longer matter whether you worship the Father on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans know very little about the one you worship, while we Jews know all about Him. For salvation comes through the Jews. But the time is coming, indeed, it's here now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father is looking for those who will worship Him that way. For God is spirit, so those who worship Him must worship in spirit and in truth." Now, when we sit here and we look at this passage, we look at this, we have to understand the Samaritans rejected the entire Old Testament except for the Pentateuch. That basically the first like 5 chapters of the Bible, they basically sat here and would have said, we don't recognize all of this. They would have sat there and said, we don't recognize that stuff. You know what they recognized? The law. That's what they recognized. You see, the object of their worship was impersonal. Very few of them understood, and it was vague. Not only for this Samaritan woman, but for all of her nation. There's no such thing as a genuine worship when it's based on ignorance or what one does not know. See, such practices can lead to either fanaticism or sometimes humanistic legalism. When we don't really truly understand, we are going to create those things, and that's where we become legalistic things can even become into place. Well, we have to do it this certain way because of this reason, and we have to do it at this time, in this manner, dressed this way, singing this song, in this manner, at this tempo, and all these different things. We can start to create a very structured, legalistic structure about worship. But I'm sitting here going, if you just were basing that off of the law, you could very easily see that. See, now is the time for old forms limited to place and nation. This was time for them that they had limited it to this. And then to be transformed into a worship that is at once personal, in spirit, and intelligent, and in truth. See, in truth means that we're not worshiping an image of God made out of our own ideas. We see God for who He really is, not who He created Him to be. See, in worship, we can even come in and we say, here we go, this is my image of God, this is who He is, and this is who I'm coming in to worship. But we want to worship Him in truth. We want to worship Him for who He really is, not who we've made Him to be. And, and the thing is, did you guys know, if you ever thought about it, a lot of times we create an image of God. We create one in our head. And I think that's one of the vital reasons of why we need to come together as a body of believers, is so that way that truth can be revealed to us. Because if we're left up to our own selves, to our own thoughts, to our own understandings on things, we start to create a truth about who God is that is not who God really is. It's who we've made Him into be. And we need to have that check and balance system where we come together as believers and we go, no, this is who God really is. I mean, let's face it, we live in a world that does not really know the truth. They do not know who God is. They've made God who they want God to be. And they need to be able to have that truth revealed to them. So when I come in for worship, I don't want to worship Him for who I made Him out to be. I want to worship Him for who He really, truly is. See, to worship in spirit means that we yield our wills to God's will. Our thoughts and plans to God's. It's not about what we want. It's not about our desires. It's not about any one of those things whatsoever. We have to completely let ourselves go when we want to worship God. We have to completely put ourselves back and say, God, it's all about you. There's one of the more popular, he's been for years, one of the very popular Christian artists out there. And he has a song, and the song is specifically about who, when he gets up on concert and he sings, and he says, who's at center stage? Is it him? Is it his music? No, he wants God to be at center stage of everything that he does. It's not about me. I'm in the shadows. I'm in the background. This is about God and who He is. He's front and center. I'm going to tell you, that's one of those things. We had one of our, I'm not going to go into who and what, my wife was probably sick and tired of hearing about this. But it was like we were at NYC. There's one of the bands that's at NYC. Great, I mean, musically they're great. Love their music. It's upbeat, it's catchy, they put on a phenomenal show, it's very entertaining. But do you know how many times you hear the word God come out of their mouth while they're performing? Very few. Very few of their songs have the name Jesus, God, Holy Spirit. 95% of their stuff has nothing to do with that whatsoever. When they get up, and then I'm sitting there and I'm listening to them and they're talking and I'm going, oh my goodness, you're right there. They're talking about something. I'm going, just say it. Just say it. Say the name God. Just do it. You're right there. And they're not doing it. And I'm going, what a missed opportunity. And I walk out of it and I'm going, they're not my favorite group. I'm down because of that. I went into it going, this is not one of my favorite groups. And it's because I don't feel that God was being put front stage in what they were doing. It's about them. It's about what they like to do. It's about their entertainment to people. It's not about presenting God as who He is and what He has done for us. You see, to do this, there's three things here that I believe we have to do. One is, the very first thing is we have to prepare ourselves with understanding that in worship, God is the audience. We're not the audience in worship. God is the audience. We sit here and we stand, and it's hard sometimes because we stand out there, and when we sit in pews out there, and we're looking forward, and we're doing all this, and we have someone up here leading us, technically, you would sit there and say, by worldly terms, we're the audience, right? Yeah. I mean, the way we're sitting there, the way we're participating, the way that we're doing this, we are the audience. But we have to remember, the songs that we're singing, we're not being sung to. We're just being led so that we can sing to the true audience, which is God. He is the audience. See, the worship service does not and should not revolve around what we like or do not like. It has absolutely nothing to do with us. None of us. It has absolutely nothing to do with any of us. All of worship is a gift we give to God and God alone. See, when we worship in spirit and truth, the Bible says that God the Father will seek us out. I can sit here and say, in the worship services, the times of worship, when I am truly worshiping God, it's not about me. It's not about what the person next to me is doing or not doing. It's not about, do I raise my hand? Do I not? Because no one else is raising their hand. Do I stand? Or do I sit? Because no one else around me is standing or sitting. Do I, everyone else, is it one hand? Is it two hands? Is it palms out? Palms up or out? What is it? We're not sitting there worried about those things. Those times when I sit there and I completely let go, and I am 100% focused on God, and I'm sitting here singing these songs to Him. Like He was standing in front of me and I was having a conversation, like I was reading a love poem to Him. When I let those things go, God seeks me out in a powerful way in that worship service. It's not that He's not going to find you. It's not that He's going to move. It's like so many things that we do in the church. We have to look at the true source and realize what the byproducts are. We sit here and we go, it's not about how many people we can get in our church. It's about how many people we can get into heaven. How many people we can love. The byproduct is if we're doing that, our seats and our pews are going to get filled up with people. If we focus on the right thing, just like in worship, God's going to come and He is going to move within us within a mighty way if we do and focus on the right thing. I've had a lot of people sitting here, and I've had a lot of conversations since I got back. A lot of them here, even in this church, about people that have seen the videos. We showed the recap video of NYC last week. And they go, oh, I would love to be able to experience a worship service like that. I would love to be able to be in a big group like that and have thousands sitting there worshiping God. And I'm going to tell you, there's moments that even in the midst of all that, we started off the week and I'm sitting there and I'm looking around. And I'm watching everybody and I'm seeing this. And, I'm going to be honest, God didn't move in my life and my heart at those points in time. I was standing there singing the words on the screen. I was going through the practice. I was going through the ritual of it. But it was probably, we started Thursday morning. It was probably Friday morning, Friday night. We were probably halfway through before God, I don't know what happened. I can't tell you what transitioned and changed. But all I remember is Friday night, and we were sitting there, And we were singing and we were praising God. And next thing I know, I had my hands in the air. I was broke down. I couldn't hardly get the words out of my mouth. I was choking up. And I was going, and all of a sudden there was just a moment, and I stopped and I realized that I wasn't even singing the words that were on the screen. I had changed the words. Instead of the words being us and them and different things like that, it was all possessive. It was what you've done for me. It was all of a sudden things transitioned, and it was like I was there, and it was me and God alone. And I was singing these songs to Him just like I was carrying on a private conversation with Him. And I couldn't have told you what anybody around me was doing. I couldn't have told you anything because I was 100% focused on who God was. Not that He had made my bank account big enough, or that I had a nice home, or anything like that, but that I was saved from the depths of hell. What He had done for my personal spiritual life, the relationship that I had with Him, all those things just came flooding into me. And it was just one of those incredible moments. And it was amazing. From that moment on, for the rest of the time that we were there, I went into those services, and I had to stop. And I'm one of those people, I can't even read a book with people around me talking. I can't read a book when there's TV on, there's people talking. I have to have complete, total, utter silence because I get distracted very easily with stuff that's going on around me. And I went in there, and I intentionally went in there, and it was almost like I put these blinders on. And I went, I'm not going to look. I'm not looking at anything else that anybody else is doing. I'm looking at God and God alone. That's all it is. It's me and Him right here, right now. You see, the second thing is, we have to understand that God created us to be worshipers. He made us to be worshipers. We have no choice in the matter. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to worship Him, but that we are made to be worshipers. We either worship God or we worship something else. People get to choose what they worship. That's that little thing that we like to call free will. You see, in our life, and we have to sit here and we have to realize that you can either tell people, you can tell what people worship by how excited they get when they talk about their idol. How excited are you when you talk about God? Is that the most exciting thing that you talk about, or do you get more excited about a TV show that comes on TV, a book that you've read, a CD that you've listened to? That's not even really a CD anymore. Or another person that you talk to. It doesn't matter. We get to tell what people worship by what they get the most excited about. You know, last week we sat here and said, if you want to be Spirit-filled, that has to be your number one thing in your life. That has to be your number one priority. Do we get excited about Jesus, and get as excited about Jesus as we do our sports team or our hobby or so forth? I got told years ago, they said, oh, you would make an incredible, when I was in printing, they said, you make an incredible salesman. And I said, no, I won't be. I said, the only way I can sell something is if I believe in it. So I said, you just get so excited, you just start talking about it, you sell me on it. And I said, because I have to believe in it. So I have to believe that what I'm selling is a good product and what it is. And it's because it's what made an impact in my life, and it was near and dear to me. And I believe it's the same way with my relationship with God. It's near and dear to me, and I get excited about it. And so I sit there going, oh yeah, I can share Jesus all day long because it's something that I've made sure that that's who I'm worshiping in my life. He's number one. There's nothing else more important than Him. And then the third thing is, remember that worship is not just the 20 minutes of singing at the start of church, or even singing whatever it is. We have a tendency to sit there and think about worship and worship arts. And it can be lots of different things. We had these individuals come out at NYC. They tried to do lots of different things. We had individuals come out and they did the whole acrobatic thing. They dropped the big pieces of silk from the ceiling, and they sat out there and they climbed up these things and they're twirling around and doing all this. Well, we're worshiping. And I'm going, that's worship arts. That's a way. I mean, people, like I said, there's lots of interpretive things that we do. But we have to realize that it goes beyond just that. It's all-encompassing of our life. It's how we live our life. See, in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, it says, we are called every day to be a living sacrifice for God. That means we are set apart to worship God in all that we do. So, in your life, elevate the worship of God to a new place higher than it has ever been before, and be amazed at how God shows up. So if we want an incredible, we sit here and say, man, I'm just not getting the worship experience that I want, then maybe we need to look and see, are we putting God in the place that He needs to be at? See, I hear people say that they need their weekly church service so that they can get filled up. And God does give us that opportunity. Don't let me get me wrong there. There's those times and there is that aspect of it. But again, is that the reason why we're coming? See, God, if we're truly worshiping God, God is going to seek us out. He's going to fill us up. But what is the motive for coming? Is it just our own selfish desire sitting there saying, God, I need to be refilled up? Or is it, so God, I can worship you for who you are? Just strictly who you are. Do you think that the angels in heaven worship God just because of what He's done for them, or just because you're in His presence? And I just imagine what that's going to be like when you're in His presence. Just being in His presence makes you want to bow down and worship Him. To be able to raise your hands and say, and just let it out. See, why are we here this morning? Is it out of habit? Is it out of ritual? Is it only because of what you need? Or is it because God is so wonderful and has impacted our lives in such an incredible way that we can't wait to get here and worship Him for those things? And again, we have to remember, how has He impacted our lives spiritually? It all goes back to God didn't give us and tell us that our lives are going to be pain-free, misery-free. We can sit here and go all day long about those things. But that's not what God promised us. But those things are counteracted. Those things are made bearable. Those things are made okay by the fact that what God has done for us, that He has made a way for us to experience eternal life with Him in heaven. See, I want to be able to get here, and I can't wait to get here on Sunday morning so I can sit there and be able to gather together with the body of believers and be able to praise Him for that. See, we can try as much as we want during the week to prepare for Sunday. Like I said, in ministry, we spend a lot of time preparing for things. And in our faith, we have to realize that effective and impactful worship is never a result of our efforts. It's never about how well we prepare. Do we have the right song list? Do we have everything set just right? Do we have the things in the right order? It's not about our effort. True worship happens when we learn to say yes in ever-increasing ways to God's invitation to encounter Him. And He's going to continually seek you out to encounter Him in a new and deeper way. And it's going to be whether or not we sit there and we're willing to say, yes, Lord, yes, I want to encounter you in that way. What we should be preparing for each week is ways to help people receive God's invitation to encounter Him. That's what we have to be focused on when we're sitting here and we start thinking about a worship service. It's preparing each week to say, now how are we going to help communicate that? How are we going to make that for those that have not encountered Him yet? How can we let them encounter them so they can truly worship Him the same way that I do? Or how can I deepen somebody's way of worshiping Him by helping them have a deeper encounter with Him this morning? See, when we properly understand this concept of worship, it completely changes how we enter into a sanctuary or worship center. See, are we on time or do we keep God waiting? Do we come prepared? Are we ready to worship Him when we show up? Are we expecting, and I've been in church before where people sit back and go, okay, move me, get me to that place of worship, I'm waiting for it. Bring me the music, bring me the songs, help me get to that point where I can worship God. If you don't show up ready to worship God, there's no amount of songs that are going to get you there. Do we come with anticipation, or do we come out of duty? Do we come out of responsibility, obligation? Do we come to Him and sit there and say, I am so looking forward to God to move this morning? I'm ready for it. How is he going to move this morning? I'm looking for him. Or is it because, well, it's that time again? All right, we got to go. We got to get there. It's that time. See, do we greet our Lord as he is truly present? That he's here right now. He's here with us right now. Or do we simply find a seat and settle down and take in all the action? Or do we act like he's standing here, right here in front of you? I mean, if he was standing right here, right now, what would we do? Would we be sitting in our seats going, that's good. Oh my goodness, you would be unbelievable how we would be acting. I mean, we'd be all around him. We'd be going, Jesus, Jesus, what about this? What about, oh my goodness, we'd be bowing down. We'd be praising his name. You sit there and you listen and you think about those days, and even in the Nazarene church when our people would sit there and they had to get their hankies out and they get to waving, or they'd start walking up and down the aisles. They get excited about those things. We're going to get excited when we see Jesus. But he's here right now. He may not physically be here, but he's here with us. God is with us here right now.
Amen.
You see, God always invites us. He approaches us, he calls us, and invites us to a holy meeting between himself and his people. And very lastly, we need to realize that worship is an eternal enterprise. Worship was occurring before God laid the foundations of the earth. You see, in Job it says, when the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Everything screamed out to worship God because of who he is. He's so pure, so loving, so holy. You can't help but worship him. You see, it's still occurring today with all of our believers. Or it should be occurring today, and it is occurring today. And then we will spend eternity worshiping God in heaven. It says in Revelation chapter 5, it says, then I looked again, and I heard the voices of thousands and millions of angels around the throne, and of the living beings and the elders. And they sang in a mighty chorus, worthy is the Lamb who was slaughtered to receive power and riches, and wisdom and strength, and honor and glory and blessing. It has been, it is, and it always will be. See, worship is fundamentally the result of and response to the great saving events performed by God. I've shared this multiple different times this week. When I look back since I've been here and I look at some of our worship services, and I sit there, the ones that I would really put down if I was to prioritize and list them and sit there and go, from up here, looking out and seeing the response from people, to be able to see how God moves in our midst. One particular, at least I felt like we had an incredible time of worship at the end of our Easter service. To be able to see, well again, from up here, to be able to see the looks on everybody's faces. Sometimes we don't get to see that. We don't realize how things impact each other. But as an overall whole, it was a great time. And why was it such a great time? And it's because we spent that entire day, that entire season, focusing on what God had done for us. We were focusing on the saving events performed by God, the grace of God. It was open to us. It was fresh to us. It was moving in us. And our worship reflected that. So I wonder, what if we came every time? And not just in worship services, but what if we remembered that every moment of our day, and we lived our life worshiping him that way? Every moment of every day, of every week, of every year, we worshiped him in that manner because we remember what he did for me. That he sent his one and only Son to die for us. We know how powerful an image that is. Why do we only allow that to move us a couple of times a year? Why does that not move us every Sunday? And go beyond just every Sunday, but every day that we wake up in the morning, and that image drives us to worship Him in the exact same way. I believe that's one of the driving forces for us to spread His gospel, to spread His message, is when we have that image. We get excited. We get pumped up about it. And we start going, woo! Look what He did for me. I got to share that with somebody. That's worship. That is worship. One cannot experience a visitation of God and not respond. It's impossible. Our worship is always a response to truth. So if you're struggling in your worship, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I don't have that type of worship we're talking about, or I don't have it all that often, or it just comes from time to time, and I want to have it. I want to be able to have that every time. And not only do I want to have that every Sunday, but I want to have that when I leave church, and when I wake up on Monday, and when I go to bed on Monday, when I wake up on Tuesday, and I go to bed on Tuesday, I want to be able to have that. And it just continues on. It's there, it's ready, and it's open to all. We just have to ask and receive. You don't have to feel out of place. You don't have to feel awkward. So this morning, we're going to go into a prayer time. And we're going to invite ourselves to be able to come to the altars. And again, we say different things. We have different prayer time each week. And sometimes it's we need God. And it's okay. God tells us to do that. That's part of what makes Him so great. That's part of what makes Him worthy of our worship. Because He says, come. Even though you don't deserve it, come and ask of these things. And so we have those times where we get to come to the altars. Maybe we need to be filled up. Maybe our cup has started to get empty. And He's going to fill it. But why is He going to fill it? It's because we're seeking Him first and foremost. We are worshiping Him first and foremost for who He is and what He has done. Not just for us, but for this entire world. So we're going to have this time. So this morning, whether you're going, I know I want to have a deeper relationship with Him. I know I want to have deeper worship with Him. I want to be able to have that time where I can walk out of this church today, and every day this week I wake up and I go, woo! Thank you, Lord, for what You've done. That's what you're longing for. If that's what you want, take it. It's yours. It's here. It's ready. It's waiting. It's willing. Do it. It's all it takes. Is being able to say, God, I want You that much. Come and receive it. Receive Him. Let God do a work in and through you. And the thing is we too can worship God in spirit at that time. We can worship Him in truth. So this morning, we invite you to come and worship Him. Worship Him as He intended. Worship Him as He deserves here this morning.